right. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. So you are the courageous few that I didn't scare off yesterday with the presentation. Thank you for being here. In case you've missed my previous keynote, there are 3 things that you should remember. So 1, I'm Olivier Ponti, and I work for ForwardKeys as VP Insights. 2, ForwardKeys is a travel analytics company. And 3, if you want to recognize me with my mask on later today, you should look for a bunch of wild gray hair, not to be confused with Arturo's fabulous hairdo. So please, I'm still sticking around the rest of the day, so come to me and have a chat if we haven't had this opportunity yet. The plan for today is to see how destination data can be a game changer for investors. And before we do this, I'd like to start with a short story, a story about the early days of the pandemic. At this time, like many businesses across the travel ecosystem, me and my colleagues, we were under heavy pressure. And that's understandable because when you've built a business which consists in selling data and insights about air travel at a time when flights are canceled and most planes worldwide are grounded, you have a problem. And sure enough, in the first month of the pandemic, we've lost some pretty big clients, mainly from the travel retail and duty-free sector. But what we hadn't anticipated is that financial institutions would save the day, that they would help us make 2020 our best year to date. You see, in a time that was unprecedented, investors were looking for alternative data. And they wanted this data to be fresh because the situation was changing at a very fast pace. And that's why they came to us. And they did not only act as our life jacket, I would say, for this crisis, but they also helped us prepare the future because they helped us understand the value of our data, the way it could be used by financial institutions and investors, and they helped us understand what we needed to do to make this data available to them. So for us, this crisis has been actually of great help. Now, before I go any further, I'd like to do an experiment here. Quick and dirty, I know it's late, you've just had lunch, but I'd like to get a sense of who's in the room. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and I would like you to stand up if you agree with the following statement. The first statement is this: my company makes use of past data to make business decisions. Please stand up if you think that's true. Kind of expect everybody to stand up here. Really, you're not using past data. Okay, thank you. Second statement. My company uses real-time data to make business decisions. Please stand up if that's the case. All right, thank you. We've got some more people joining. All right, and the last one, I'm sure you see it coming. You see, you too, you can predict the future. My company uses forward-looking data to make business decisions. Please stand up if this is true. All right, so that's a bit less than half of the participants here. I think what you're going to see here is going to be interesting, guys. And for those of you who are not using forward-looking or real-time information, this may be even more interesting. We'll see. So the focus is not on forward-looking data, not for now, it's on destination data. What do we mean by destination data? Well, basically anything that has to do with a destination. That is, it can be your hotel statistics, it can be your the different pieces of research that are produced by the local destination marketing organization. It can be pretty much anything. Seen from a ForwardKeys perspective, the destination data that we use and provide, it's on the one hand information regarding the supply side of the business. You've seen this yesterday. It's all the airlift scheduled by airlines, and it's information regarding the demand with flight searches made prior to booking a trip, and bookings and tickets that are issued. That's what we use, and that's what we're going to use for the remainder of this presentation. So the first question that investors often ask is, which destinations are in high demand? What are the hottest destinations? That's a pretty easy one to start with. So looking at LATAM and the Caribbean for the period ranging from March of this year until the end of August, that's the ranking. Those are the destinations which are in high demand. As you can see, we're looking here at destinations that are way ahead of 2019 levels. San Salvador, San Jose Cabo, Liberia, Puerto Vallarta, Providenciales, all of these are way ahead of 2019 levels. Now, let's ask ourselves the same question, which destinations are the hottest, but we're looking at it from a different perspective. Let's say you're considering an investment for which US business travelers are key. And here you get a different ranking. You can see some destinations popping up that you didn't see earlier. That's the case for St. Lucia or Antigua, for example. But maybe more importantly, you can see that Mexico is not only still there, but it trusts 3 out of the 5 most resilient destinations for this specific profile. So I'm sure you all had Mexico on your radar, but if you're in this case focused on US business travelers, Mexico should really remain on this radar for a while because it's still hot. One thing to take into account when assessing the relevance of a data set is how granular it is. How much can you dice and slice this data to make it speak? Well, here's an interesting example, I think, because when you look at some key elements of visitor profiles and travel patterns for the whole region, so again, here we're looking at LATAM and the Caribbean for March to August, you can see that there isn't that much change. You know, the number of packs per booking now compared with pre-pandemic is pretty much the same. The lead time, that is the difference between the moment you book your flight and the moment you actually depart, is very stable as well. There's just a 2 days difference. And the length of stay has not changed. So does this mean that there's been no change between now and the beginning of the pandemic? Of course not. Of course things have changed. But in order to see this, you need to dig deeper into the data. You need to segment things more. For example, by starting crossing the information with nationality data and profile data. That's exactly what we're going to do. And here I would like to focus on Argentina. Why Argentina? Well, why not? We haven't talked about this country so far. And we're going to see how booking data can help us understand travel from affluent travelers to Argentina. The first thing I'd like to stress is that looking at Argentina as a whole, again for that period March to August, we can see that the share of high-end travelers, affluent travelers, that is the people traveling at the front of the plane, has increased by 6 percentage points. That's significant, but let's dig a little bit further to understand who these guys are. Top markets for affluent travelers to Argentina include Brazil, the US, Spain, Chile, and Colombia. Now, let's zoom in even further and look at Brazil. Wow. Here, it's not 6 percentage points more, it's 13 percentage point more. So, travel from Brazil to Argentina is clearly more and more driven by travelers in premium classes. And it turns out that Brazilians currently represent 31% of all premium travel to Argentina, which is much higher than pre-pandemic when it was 22%, and that's even more. That's even higher than for the US or the other destinations that you can see. Source markets that you can see here. So it's not only that the share of affluent travelers coming from Brazil has increased, it's also that the volumes of affluent travelers from Brazil to Argentina has increased, actually by 23%. This represents a really interesting business opportunity to take into account. Where are those guys going to in Argentina? Here we've clustered both Brazil and the US. That's the majority of all affluent travelers traveling to Brazil. Well, you can see it here. It's Buenos Aires, San Carlos de Bariloche, Ushuaia, Mendoza. It's all places, you're looking at places with a very correct, good supply of luxury accommodation and resorts. So we know who's going to benefit from this trend. Another way to look at the data is to see how you could capitalize on the longer stays. And for this one, I'd like to turn to Brazil, this time as a destination. Same thing, we haven't talked about Brazil. And as you can see here, there's a major shift on the long stays category. Long stays for us, it's more than 14 days. It's gone from 25% to 46%. And you may think, whoa, that's a bonanza for Brazil. So many people staying for such a long period of time, they're going to spend a lot of money. But hey, look, 50% of these guys come to visit family, friends, and relatives. They're not going to spend a lot of money. So the business is more on those 46% which are coming for leisure. So you want to know where they are going. And in a nutshell, it's not Brazil as a whole which is benefiting from those long-stay travelers. It's the southeastern part of Brazil, Belo Horizonte, Goiânia, Porto Alegre, and the others. That's where the money is going to be spent. This is where revenue is going to be generated. We can also use the data to spot rising stars for connectivity. Looking at transfers, where are people transferring? And here we're in Panama. This was the perfect example. We've heard the hub strategy of Panama. It works. It works. Again, looking at the month ahead, March to August, we can see that the total number of trips involving a transfer in Panama will increase by 65% compared with pre-pandemic levels. That's quite a significant difference. And we're seeing a lot of transfers from Cuba. Cubans that transfer in Panama to reach Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and Guyana. That doesn't really come as a surprise. And Nicaragua has just changed its visa policy for Cubans, which has boosted demand from this country. Costa Rica suspended its direct connection with Cuba in 2019, and it hasn't been reestablished since then, hence the relevance of the Panama hub. And for Guyana, there's never been a direct connection, hence, again, the value of the Panama hub. All these transferring passengers represent business opportunities for different operators in the travel ecosystem. So this is important information, which is usually not that easy to spot. And as a side note, you can also see that here again, the share of premium cabin classes has very significantly increased, and here we're seeing a lot of business travel on this route. We'll stick with rising stars, but this time I'd like to focus on secondary airports. Because in a way, it's easy to have Panama on your map, especially when you're in Panama and you have the Minister of Tourism of Panama on stage at regular moments to explain just how wonderful the destination is and all the great things that they're doing to boost the infrastructures. So it's easy to have Panama on your mental map, but what about the others? Let's focus on Pereira in Colombia. That's the great example. To be completely frank with you, I had never heard of Pereira before working on this presentation. And I'm not even ashamed of admitting it, because I think this makes precisely the point that I want to make, which is that data is incredibly useful to draw your attention on things that you had not thought of. For example, Pereira. Looking at the evolution of seat capacity to Pereira, we can see that since April of last year, it's actually way above pre-pandemic levels. There's plenty of people flying to Pereira and going to its UNESCO sites centered around coffee and the coffee experience. And it's not only coffee lovers flying there. Apparently, there's a free trade zone which is attracting some business travelers. But anyway, here we can see that there's something happening, and this is confirmed when looking at tickets, where we can see a strong increase in bookings and tickets issued, with the US being the #1 market for the destination. 51% of all upcoming trips to Pereira, and it's clearly a market which is driven by the leisure segment, 73% of the total, only 18% of people traveling to visit friends and relatives. And when you put this figure in perspective with the overall figures for Pereira, you can see that the share of VFR travel is much lower. It's above 30% in general. So only 18% of VFR for the US. It means that it's a strongly leisure-driven market. It's people who are going to enjoy the destination and, again, spend some money. The last example I'd like to focus on, and the way we can use data, is the monitoring of events. Now, there are all kinds of events. We've got events that are planned well ahead of time. Think of the Olympics, the World Expo, we all know this. And there are also plenty of events that are not planned. Usually it's the bad ones. So think terror attack, natural disaster, a pandemic, you name it. Now, even if it is an event that has been appearing on a frequent basis, I don't know, a hurricane or whatever, you've had this before, it's really difficult for a specific event happening in a specific destination at a specific moment in time. It's really difficult to anticipate what the impact of this will be just using past data. Past data doesn't cut it. What you need here are real-time data. Well, not to finish on a too gloomy note with a natural disaster, a pandemic, or whatever, I'd like to focus on a positive event or positive series of small-scale events that illustrate the recovery of UK travel to LATAM and the Caribbean. You can see that every single time that travel restrictions were lifted, for example, the 28th of October, when the very much criticized red list was ditched, wow, we had a boost in the number of tickets issued to travel from the UK to LATAM. Same thing in February, when pre-departure test requirements were removed. And looking forward, we can see the Easter holiday period, where we will have a peak, and the Jubilee period, which is going to be high season as well. All these events are showing a strong reactivation of the market and are boosting this reactivation. So a few tips I would like to leave you with, which I hope will help you make advantage of destination data. The first one is that it's really important to slice and dice the data if you want to get relevant insights. That can be identifying the hottest destinations, that can be identifying some destinations which were not on your mental map and that may represent a good opportunity. You also need to keep your mind open for changing plans based on those insights that you will derive from data. And real-time data clearly is the way to go if you're in a highly volatile environment where unexpected things are happening, because all of those events, they are disruptive by nature, and their short-term and long-term consequences are difficult to grasp. So that's when you really need data. And the final point is that you should always try to connect the dots. What do I mean by that? I think that being successful with data is not about identifying the perfect data set. It's not about finding the single source of truth. It's about making use of what you have, and in a process of trial and errors, identify these data sets that will help you make smarter decisions. And then invest. Keep investing in data and in business intelligence so that you make better business. I think it's a journey, and I hope you will have a lot of fun underway. Thank you very much for your attention.